Dion here again, and this is my part two of, again, just in my humble opinion, things that I think are different between the US and the UK. I have not been able to get out very much at all due to my mother's health conditions, so here is just a little drive through a village, or a town rather, in Virginia. Unfortunately, I just have not been able to get out and explore, and I'm really looking forward to getting back to the UK so that Chris and I can get out and about and do some more explorations. And as I said last week, yes, if I were willing to get out in the car and drive around, I could do that, but I'm just not familiar with this area, so I'm really not comfortable with driving around this area. So on with the comparisons. One thing I have noticed is that I enunciate my T's now. Americans tend to pronounce a T with a D. You know, it's just that D sound instead of a T sound. And where I got caught up on that was back in the day. I don't think many women wear tights, which are pantyhose in America. I don't think they wear them very often now, but you know, back in the day, you used to say, oh, you have a run in your pantyhose. And in England, they would say you have a ladder in your tights, because it does actually look like a ladder that you would climb up. Now, I can remember over enunciating ladder and saying latter, and I still have trouble with that. I mean, it is spelled with D, so I'm allowed to use the D sound, but it is funny that I would use the T sound just because I had gotten so used to enunciating the D sound that Americans use. I would make sure that I was pronouncing my T's. So, you know, you have a ladder in your tights. For me, became you have a ladder in your tights. And another funny story was when one of my friends said, I want a bottle of water. Sorry, I can't do the accent. I want a bottle of water. And I went, bottle of water. And she said, well, that's better than bottle of water. And I went, you know, fair play. That was well played. I like that. That was good. So I really did try then, like water, bottle. You know, I really made a concerted effort to make sure I pronounced my T's. Also, another great British word, which I haven't quite picked up on this one yet. This is one that even after 25 years, I haven't really used, and that's in it. In it. In it a great day. You know, and I'd be like, what? In it? What? And they even type that on their messages, you know, when they're sending social media messages. In it great, instead of isn't it great. So that's not one I've quite picked up on. I can hear it now. When you say in it, I'll know you mean isn't it. Whereas I think when I first moved here and I heard in it, I was like, is that a bug? What is an in it? Is that like a mosquito? What is that? You know. Anyway, that's just one of the other strange words that I've UK versus US. Now, I know in the UK, most of us go out and we don't have refillable drinks like they do in the US. They have almost every place you go, you can get a refill. Now, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I've seen refills at Burger King here in the UK, and I've seen refills at Subway. But a big difference I noticed is that because of our sugar tax in the UK, there is a sugar tax, and you pay a bit more to have the regular Coke. Not much, but you pay a bit more to have a regular Coke than to have a Diet Coke or to have a diet soda. So when I have been at places in the UK where they do refillable drinks, almost every drink in the machine is sugar-free, with a couple of options for sugared drinks. And that always annoys Chris because he doesn't like diet drinks at all. Makes me very, very happy because I love diet drinks. So that's a difference, that if you go somewhere in the US, I've been to 2 places so far, And it was really difficult to find diet drinks. There would be like a Diet Coke option, and that was about it. Yeah, so I found that really strange. And then I remembered, oh yes, it's because of the sugar tax that they do that. So there's another difference, just another small difference between the UK. And we've gotten quite used to not having refillable drinks. You know, it's not something you don't need to fill yourself with, especially if you're drinking sugary drinks and you're filling yourself with 800 calories of some sort of sugary soda. But that is a big thing that I have noticed, that you know, we offer far more of the 0 calorie. Oh, and another thing, oh my gosh, I was amazed. They don't do Pepsi Max over here. I love Pepsi Max Cherry. That is like my go-to. And I was really shocked looking at all the food. You know, you saw some of it last week, looking at all the food and not seeing Pepsi Max. And I'm like, where is Pepsi Max in America? I want my Pepsi Max Cherry. It's not to be had here. You can't find it. So that was really strange for me. I'm like, okay, you know, that's an advantage of the UK, because as I said, I absolutely love the cherry cola. So isn't that strange that, you know, again, the sugar tax has had, I think, a really good impact on the UK. I have noticed while going out to dinner with family and friends here in the USA that dinners here seem to be fairly quick. You kind of go in, you know, have your meal, and then you leave. And I know that's the case in some places in the UK. And I'm talking about restaurants, not fast food. So in the UK, we do tend to maybe have a coffee or a tea or a drink after a meal. Sometimes there'll be desserts, sometimes there won't, you know, depending on how full we are from our meals. So that's kind of another difference, that, and I know in Europe that is the case, that people do, you know, spend time over their meals, and it's not necessarily about the meal, it is about the company that you're with and enjoying the company you're with. Whereas in America, it just feels like you're kind of rushed to eat and go. Now, is that the case? Do any Americans that are watching this, do you feel that? Is that just me, you know, being super paranoid? Which, you know, again, not surprising. I am a little paranoid at times. So it's nice to be able to have a leisurely dinner and not feel like the staff are rushing you. There are loads and loads of videos about tipping in America, and it is very much a very cultural thing over here that you leave a tip. I was really shocked the last time I was here. My dad and I went to Subway. We went to Subway. You stand in the queue, you tell them what you want on your sandwich, and then you get to the end. And at the end, the register came up and said, do you want to leave a tip? And I immediately hit no. And my dad, who was actually paying for it, said, oh, I would have left them a tip. And I'm like, why are you leaving fast food restaurants a tip? It's a real thing over here. Now, we know in restaurants, now I would hope that Subway are paying their staff minimum wage, but we know in restaurants in the UK, the servers don't necessarily make minimum wage. They may be making $2, $3 an hour, and they depend on their tips to bump up their wage. And I find that deplorable. You know, why are companies not paying, especially when you think about companies like Subway or McDonald's or Burger King? You know, they're big companies. Why are they not paying minimum wage? Or are they paying minimum wage? And now there's such a tip culture in the US that they feel like they have to pay a tip. In the UK, now I do like to leave tips. I'm an American, we always left a tip. And back in the day, it was 10%. You always left 10%. And my brother tells me now, he's like, no. It's not 10% anymore, it's 20. I'm like, oh crap. That's harder to figure out mathematically. 10% is really easy. Well, I know you could just double the 10%. I know. But I'm like, it just seems really strange that over here, you are expected to supplement someone's income when they're working for a large company, or they're working for, you can imagine if it's a mom and pop diner, maybe not, and you're getting a good cheap meal. I will say fast food and restaurants over here are still a bit cheaper than the UK. I mean, that just goes without saying. If you're gonna buy a pizza over here, Domino's keeps showing up on my YouTube over here, because I'm watching all the YouTube American ads now that I'm in YouTube. I could put my VPN on my phone and still get the British ads, but when I'm watching on the TV, either my parents or my brothers, I'm getting a lot of US ads, and it's just strange, this tipping culture, that why aren't people being paid enough to live on? I don't understand, whenever you work for a large corporation, that they're not paying you enough, that you have to depend on your tips. And now in one instance, that makes the American servers they really will go out of their way to please you, because they want to make sure they get a good tip. So in a way, that's kind of good. A lot of people have said to me, well, everybody seems very, very friendly in America. And, when you go to a restaurant, they'll bend over backwards to make sure that everything's okay. But again, you got to think, well, the reason why they're doing that is monetary. It's not necessarily, something that just comes from their heart. I don't think, anyway. Again, this is all my opinion. So that's kind of a strange, the tipping culture is completely different. You do not need to leave tips. And I find it interesting that when you go to British restaurants, we eat at the Beefeater a lot, and they will actually turn off the tip notification. And then I might say to them, oh, I'd like to leave a tip, because they do work hard. And I will leave a 10%. I'm not doing 20%, guys. I'm just not doing it, And when we're over here in the USA, I begrudge doing it, but I will do it if we go someplace, a really nice restaurant that I know the poor staff are just working their what's off, their patooties off, to get those tips, because they need that to live. And that's just sad. To me, that's just sad. So I will give tips for really good service in the UK, but if it's just certainly they don't ask for tips at the subway in the UK. They just don't ask for that. You don't get to the final payment and they go, would you like to leave a tip? It's like, what? You've got to be kidding. These people are making sandwiches, and they're earning a wage, which unfortunately in the US, they don't have the employment laws the EU and the UK do. They do not have those employment laws that protect people. So that's a shame. Of course, on that subject, I've also gotten quite used to having, well, I don't work now because of my cancer diagnosis, but when I was working, and I did work many years in the UK, having 4 weeks off a year was just amazing. We had 20 days off and 8 bank holidays. So that was absolutely, you could actually do your holidays. And I know a lot of people watch American videos or American YouTubes, and they're going away for a long weekend, and that's about what they have to do. They're also kind of frightened to ask for days off over here. And the only time I had that issue was if someone else had that time booked off that worked in your department and they were meant to cover for you, then of course, you kind of knew that amongst each other. It's like, oh, I'm booking the first week of December. Oh, okay, I'll work, before Christmas. Oh, okay, I'll book the second week. We all worked together to make sure that the work was covered. And we didn't really ask for holidays that might coincide with the coworkers that were going to have to do your job while you were gone. Now over here, that's just not the case. The employers can say no really easily, and a lot of Americans are afraid to take holiday. And I just find that now, having been in the UK for so long, again, that's just a sad situation, because there are no employment laws in federal laws. There are, it's all up to the employer. So that's just I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that I got to move to the UK. And it's not perfect, guys. It is not perfect. I know there's no perfect, wonderful utopia society anywhere. But I am so thankful because I guarantee you, and this is not to slag off anybody, another great British word I used. It's not to slag off or to make fun of anyone. But if I were living over here and my husband and I had stayed in England, I can guarantee you, number one, I'd be living in, because we were low income, we had low income jobs. I'd probably be living in a motorhome park somewhere. I wouldn't be traveling, but I'd be probably working a low wage because I always worked in environments that were low wage over here, despite having a degree. And it was a tough life. And I can look back now and say that. Now, at the time, I didn't think so. It was normal. It was a completely normal lifestyle to have a week off. My first 5 years that I worked, I had a week off a year, plus 12. I think they have a few more bank holidays now. But I had 12 bank holidays off. So I had a week off plus 12 bank holidays. And that was it. And I got really used to that. Now, after I worked for the company for 5 years, they gave me an extra week off. So I then had 2 weeks off plus my bank holidays. And I just find that absolutely amazing, because I do think when you're working, you need to have that time off. You need to recharge your batteries. You need to be able to regenerate and be able to go back into work with good thoughts and with good ideas. And the fact that they don't do that here is really kind of horrifying. That's just another one of the things that I think has changed a bit for me. There's also a fantastic amount of fast food in the US. And there are videos out there that talk about areas where people can't even get fresh food. Do they call it a fresh food desert or something like that? That there are just so many fast food outlets. And I'm not saying I don't know people that eat a lot of fast food and get Deliveroo or get Just Eats and to have them delivered in the UK. They do. Well, first off, the price is higher in the UK. So I think you think twice about it. That's a treat. Okay, on Friday night, I'm going to order a Chinese, or on Friday night, I'm going to order a pizza. Whereas I think it's far more a habit over here. Again, looking at the long hours people work, the easiest thing they can do is pop in somewhere and get fast food and take it home. So, or call one of the delivery services. So I'm not knocking this at all, guys. I'm really not knocking it. It's just a difference I have noticed. I've noticed when I go to the fast food restaurants here, and I am trying to do low carb, so I'm not eating that kind of stuff really anyway. I am having a bit more wine, which I shouldn't, but when in Rome. But I have found that a lot of people don't eat inside anymore. Now, again, is this just a Midlands thing where if we go to McDonald's, Chris and I will eat inside. We will go in, we will order, we will sit down, we will have our food, and then we will leave. But over here, gosh, the Chick-fil-A, I've been to it twice with my sister-in-law, and they have it down pat. I mean, that outside, they've got 2 lanes, they've got 4 people taking your orders. And if you pay by debit card or tap, they will take your payment there. But if you're paying by cash, then you have another 2 people that are taking the cash and then grabbing your food from the window and bringing it to your car. But there's nobody inside. It is so bizarre. People are just, and some people will just go and eat in the parking lot, in their car park. They will go in the car park and eat their meal and then drive on. So that's a really strange thing to me, because I've really not been somewhere where people are inside eating. It may not be as busy as a drive-through, but you still have a lot of people in the UK that will park up and go in, order their meals, and eat inside. And the advantage to that is, number one, if they get your food wrong at the drive-through, you know, you got to go back through, you've got to go back inside anyway. So at least if you're already inside and they've made some sort of error, then you can just get it fixed right then and there. And I find that, you know, really kind of strange that fast food over here really is not an eating in experience anymore. So that's kind of strange. You know, as a kid, we really looked forward to McDonald's. I think that was about the only place that was open when I was a kid. And we only went as for special occasions. You know, we didn't go all the time. But, you know, to go inside and have that experience inside the restaurant was, or inside the fast food place was actually quite, you know, it was quite groovy. You know, we really enjoyed it. And on from that, I find now that I live in the UK, and again, is it my age? Is it just the way things have changed? I don't know. But I eat a lot of fresh vegetables now, and I do actually really, really enjoy them. I really look forward to farmers markets and being able to buy, is it called Romanesque cabbage? I love that. You know, the Romanesque, which is kind of a cauliflower broccoli with fractals on the top. It's so cool, and it tastes so good. And we really, really enjoy eating our vegetables, our fresh vegetables. And I just think that our Tesco's and our Morrison's offer, they may not offer Romanesque, but they do offer some really, really good vegetables that actually taste really good. And you know when things are out of season and you don't buy them. Chris loves to eat raw peas. You know, again, I think that's an old British thing that, you know, kids used to go and buy a bag of raw peas and eat raw peas. I don't like them at all, but I'll eat them cooked. They're great, but not raw peas. But I eat a lot more fresh vegetables now. And having been to the, you know, grocery stores here, we went one place and I could not find a fresh broccoli. I had to buy frozen broccoli. And I found that really, really weird. Where are the fresh vegetables? And they're generally more expensive here. Now, I will say I've gotten really big on cabbage. I love cabbage, particularly Savoy cabbage in the UK. But we went to Food Lion, and they actually had a huge, I mean, it was huge cabbage for 69 cents. I mean, gosh, is that like 50p or 70p? I mean, that's really cheap. And I did get it, but I have to tell you, there were only 2 left on the shelf. There was one that looked kind of manky. So, oh, another good British word. Looked kind of manky, so I didn't want to buy it. And the other one looked fantastic. And it fed us for like 3 days. It was brilliant. So I'm really into that fresh veg thing. And yes, farmers markets are more expensive in the UK, obviously, than going to the grocery store. But they're still cheaper by far on most items than over here in the US on the shelves. So it is really, really odd. But I'm so grateful. Again, it's just one of those things I'm grateful for, that I can get fresh veg, and I love it now. Now, as a kid, I probably hated it, you know, and I would have been very happy for McDonald's. But, you know, now to know I can get these fresh vegetables and I just really enjoy them. So that's just another, again, in my humble opinion, you know, and I know there are issues. I know there are farmer issues. I know that, but it's lovely that I have access to that in the UK. Thank you so much to you guys that always support me and support our channel and send me comments. We really do appreciate it. And anybody else who's just joined, thank you for joining. I hope we'll bring you some content that you can enjoy.